Good afternoon, people. Good afternoon, everyone out there. So, yesterday's lecture, we have finished women issues. And before we proceed, you need to tell me, did you guys receive the notes? Because I have given the notes to the team. And I hope that they have been uploaded. Uh, Team, you just need to open the response portal again. I think that just open the response portal again. Fine. So you've received the notes. Great. So let's start. So with that, women issue comes to an end, and just practice the questions that I've discussed in the class. Practice the essay, and that would suffice. There's just one topic which I've not covered, that is women movement, which I'll be discussing in post-independence. That's one thing. Second thing is with respect to surrogacy and any other current related topic, I will be covering in your current affair batch. So in current affair batches also, I provide the handwritten notes. So in case you guys don't get enough time to watch the entire session, all you can do is just download the handwritten material and just go through it. That would also suffice. Okay? So can we proceed? The next topic that we are supposed to take is diversity. Okay. Concept, collective differences with sets of one group different from another. That is the concept. Then manifestation, linguistic, religious, regional, racial, ethnic. Then issues with respect to diversity, linguistic nationalism, communalism, regionalism, racial intolerance, ethno-nationalism. Then unity in diversity. What is unity? Bonds of unity in India, diversity in unity. अरे भैया आपको टाइप करने का जरूरत नहीं है, मैंने देख लिया कि साइड स्क्रीन विजिबल नहीं है, वो मैंने देख लिया है. जूम आउट करना है. अब ये जूम आउट कैसे होता है? नहीं वो मैं समझ गई, इतना नहीं लिखिए, ये बताइए जूम आउट करना कैसे है. रुकिए, आप मुझे 1 मिनट का टाइम दीजिए. Rest of you kindly make this, just give me 1 minute. हेलो. अरे ये कैमरा जूम आउट करना है, वो स्क्रीन पूरी नहीं आ रही है, कट रही है साइड से. I'll just read out by the time I'm getting this thing done. Linguistic, religious, regional, racial, ethnic. Then issues with respect to diversity, linguistic nationalism, communalism, regionalism, racial intolerance, ethno-nationalism. Under unity and diversity, I've written what is unity, bonds of unity in India, and diversity in unity. ठीक है? Is the board visible now? Is everything visible? I think now it is pretty okay, right? So let's continue. So the first topic that we have to discuss today is with respect to the linguistic diversity. So to begin with, first you need to understand what is the concept of diversity. See, इतना कोई बहुत rocket science concept नहीं है. It's a simple thing. Fine, okay. So it's not a very rocket science kind of a concept. It basically says that individual differences is not treated as diversity, because obviously no two individual would be same. So individual difference is not treated as diversity. It is collective difference which sets off one group different from another, that is termed as a basis of diversity. So it can be a language, it can be religion, it can be region, it can be class, but class basic diversity we don't discuss because that is not a salient feature of Indian society, right? So whether it is race, whether it is ethnicity, whether it is caste, all of that. And caste we have already discussed, right? So there are different manifestations of diversity which is existing in our society. And with respect to all these manifestations, there are certain issues which has been confronted by Indian polity and governance. For example, linguistic chauvinism or nationalism. For example, communalism, religious fundamentalism, regionalism, racial intolerance, and ethno-nationalism. So whenever we are studying that specific topic, we would be discussing these issues. And finally, once we have done with all these issues, the last topic would be another salient feature of Indian society, which is unity in diversity. Is that clear for everyone? So let's quickly begin. The first diversity that we are taking up is linguistic diversity. Now, with respect to linguistic diversity, the first thing, the status of diversity. How diverse we are with respect to language. So, the status of diversity. Has it been a threat to national integration? Yes, it was a threat to national integration in the initial 2 decades post-independence. There were 2 major issues which has confronted us. One was the official language issue, and other was the linguistic reorganization of states. These were the 2 major issues which has confronted India in the post-independence period, in the initial 2 decades. Is that clear? So with respect to status of diversity, very quickly write down. India is extremely linguistically diverse. India is extremely linguistically diverse, with 22 languages declared as official languages under the 8th schedule or are mentioned under the 8th schedule. Approximately 124 major languages are spoken in India, with 1652 dialects to be precise. Obviously, it can keep on changing if there is any new discoveries, right? So, India is extremely linguistically diverse, with 22 languages declared as a scheduled language under the 8th schedule of the Constitution, with 124 major languages in general, and approximately 1652 different dialects are spoken in different regions. 1652. You don't have to learn all of this. This is just to tell you that in case you get a question, so in the introduction, you can specify what is the extent of linguistic diversity in India. That's it. Nothing beyond that. Okay. There is a very famous saying with respect to linguistic diversity in context of India. कोस कोस पे बदले पानी, चार कोस पे बानी. That is the extent of linguistic diversity, right? कोस कोस पे बदले पानी, चार कोस पे बानी. Every few area there is a change in the language. Is that very clear? Now, before we proceed, we need to understand that language is a most important, one of the most significant marker of group identification. It's a very important component of your cultural identity. As a result, right now, इतना लिखो फिर बात करते हैं. Language is one of the most important marker of group identification. It is an integral component of cultural identity. As a result, linguistic diversity has acted as a source of both cohesion and conflict. As a result, linguistic diversity has acted both as the source of cohesion and conflict. Often, the discords have emerged due to feeling of relative deprivation and fear of domination. Often discords have emerged due to feeling of relative deprivation and fear of domination by the speakers of majority language, as in majority language speakers, by once you've written this, I'm introducing a concept after this. इतना लिखो फिर बात करते हैं. India is extremely linguistically diverse with 22 languages declared as official language under the 8th schedule of the Constitution. The extent of linguistic diversity can be explained through a saying, कोस पे बदले पानी, कोस पे बदले पानी, 4 कोस पे पानी. Is this clear? Now, I'm introducing a concept. Guys, you need to help me with one thing. Since I'm taking too many batches simultaneously, half of the time I don't remember that in what batch I have finished what aspect. So I'm introducing a concept. मेरे को इतना बिल्कुल ध्यान नहीं है कि मैंने जब women पढ़ाया था तो ये चीज मैंने बोली थी कि नहीं. But generally, let's see. If I have taught you this concept before, it would be a revision. And if I haven't, then listen it here. Just listen. Do not write anything. I am saying every individual, whether it is you, me, anyone, take it. We are governed by two things. One, or we are sensitive about two things. One is our culture and second is our livelihood opportunity, right? If any of them or both of them are dominated or we are marginalized, discriminated, any word you can use, with respect to either our culture or livelihood or both our culture or livelihood, then there is presence of objective reality of deprivation. I'll explain. Don't worry. Let me just finish. I am saying that each one of us is governed by two aspects. One is our culture. Second is our livelihood. If either our culture or livelihood is discriminated, dominated, or we are marginalized on these lines, either both of them or either of them. In that context, there is a fact which is existing. There is an objective reality that you are being deprived. That's an objective fact, right? That's a done and dusted thing. That's an objective reality which is existing. However, it does not guarantee that you are going to retaliate. It does not guarantee that you are going to protest, agitate, or carry out a movement for the assertion of your rights. That does not guarantee. Because it might be an objective fact that you are deprived. But it might happen that we are not even aware about that deprivation. Remember Dalit? Somebody asked, I think in your batch only, that despite discrimination, why don't they, revolt against that? Why don't they raise their voice against that? Because for a very longer period of time, they were not even realizing the fact that they have been deprived, right? Only when there is a third party intervention. थर्ड पार्टी इंटरवेंशन कुछ भी हो सकता है. थर्ड पार्टी इंटरवेंशन मतलब देयर कैन बी अ पॉलिटिकल पार्टी, देयर कैन बी अ प्रेशर ग्रुप, देयर कैन बी मीडिया, देयर कैन बी सम कैरिज्मेटिक पर्सनालिटी, एनीवन. कोई भी. When there is this third party intervention who makes you realize that look, you are being deprived, then it generates the feeling of relative deprivation, where you feel you are deprived in comparison to another section of the society. And whenever there is a feeling of relative deprivation, it is often manifested in the form of retaliation. Retaliation, which can be either a protest, agitation, movement, dharna, hartal, anything. Is that clear? This concept, why am I discussing here, is because now very often we are going to use this concept in order to justify why the conflict exists in the society. Culture is, bachche, basically way of life. How you are living your life. कौन सा स्टैंजा रिपीट करूं? क्या रिपीट करूं? सब तो मैंने बोर्ड पे लिखा है. Language is an important marker of group identification. Language is an integral component of cultural identity. Linguistic diversity has acted as a source of both cohesion and conflict. Often the discords have emerged due to feeling of relative deprivation and fear of domination by majority language speakers. This is the previous slide. Somebody asked me to show the previous slide. This concept obviously I'll explain again. I haven't taught anything. Just make this diagram now. I'll explain, Shantanu. Just make this diagram. I'll give you an example to explain. Give me some time. Just write it down पहले, नहीं तो फिर कह दोगे मैम लिखा नहीं. सब लिख लो. एक बार सबने लिख लिया, then let me know. Status of diversity वाला मैम. अच्छा, ओ, वो बोल रही हो मुस्कान. Write down, India is extremely linguistically diverse. I'll repeat again. India is extremely linguistically diverse, with 22 languages declared as official languages under the 8th schedule of the Constitution. Full stop. There are approximately 1 24 major languages, with 1652 dialects spoken in different regions. स्टेटस ऑफ डाइवर्सिटी में ही आपको सब कुछ लिखना है. स्टेटस ऑफ डाइवर्सिटी में once you've written, I have not touched this topic as of now. We are just building the bridge. We have yet not arrived at this topic. Under linguistic diversity, there are two heads that we are going to take up. One is the status of diversity. So we have discussed the statistical aspect. कितनी languages official language हैं, कितनी major languages हैं, कितने dialects we have spoken. So that is the status, right? The extent of linguistic diversity. Then we are basically talking about that how language is an important component and how it creates the potential for conflict. Then only we'll discuss na ki how the conflict has arisen. Let us first try to understand that why language has that potential or how language is creating that probability of conflict. So that probability is being created because language is an important marker of group identification, how it is an integral component of your cultural identity, right? Okay, your way of life, how you speak, what language you speak, right? That is an important identification of your culture. It is an integral component of your culture. But now the question arises, fine, it is an integral component of your culture. Then why are you so sensitive about it? Fine, we are accepting that it is an integral component of your culture. So now we are trying to establish that every individual, no matter who you are, until and unless you are a highly emotionally intelligent person, that's a different story. Otherwise, each one of us are governed by two aspects. One is the culture and other is the livelihood. If I have to draw a parallel, as in the flow chart, so this is my first component. This is my first component, that every individual is governed either by their culture or by their livelihood. Okay. The second component is if either of them or both of them are dominated or we are discriminated on the basis of our culture or livelihood, then it results into a situation of deprivation. I'll explain with the example. So that's the fact. However, maybe the objective fact of deprivation is existing, but you are not retaliating, you are not resisting because you are not aware only that you have been deprived or discriminated. So when there intervenes some force, थर्ड पार्टी से यहाँ पे पार्टी मतलब पॉलिटिकल पार्टी या स्टेटस पार्टी नहीं है, कोई भी पार्टी से मेरा मतलब है एनी एंटिटी. When there is any force which intervenes and which tells you ki, look, you have been deprived either on the grounds of culture or on the grounds of livelihood, and that third force can be anything. It can be a political party, it can be a pressure group. ठीक है ना. अब आम आदमी पार्टी, it was a pressure group against the practice of corruption. ऐसा तो था नहीं कि इंडिया में नया नया the corruption had emerged. Corruption had always been a part of Indian administration, right? It has always been a part of Indian polity and governance. But with the intervention of Aam Aadmi Party, before they became a political party, they were a pressure group. When the movement was being carried out on Jantar Mantar, when they became the face of anti-corruption movement, so that was the time they made realized to the rest of the people that, look, you have been deprived. And as a result, people protested, and which was very evident in the next elections results. Is that very clear? Is it making sense? So this is how it works. ऐसा नहीं था that corruption has emerged in India for the very first time. But with that corruption, they were made to realize that, look, your livelihood is getting threatened because the money which could have been used for development of social infrastructure, which could have been used for better job opportunities, has been usurped by certain corrupt politicians and administrative officials, and because of which your livelihood is getting threatened. So there was a third party which made you realize that, look, you have been deprived, you have been discriminated. Right? So now you started feeling relatively deprived. You started feeling relatively deprived against those sections who were doing well for themselves. As a result, you retaliated, you protested, you agitated. You didn't vote for the party. right? So there can be different manifestation of retaliation. Is this very clear? Is it making sense? Can we proceed? Is there anything that you've not understood in this diagram? Let me know. I'll discuss official language issue and you will get to understand. Official language issue and linguistic reorganization of state are nothing but the example of this diagram only. So let me start with official language issue. If you don't understand anything, then let me know. Okay? I'll come back to this diagram again. I'm not, it will stay with us on the screen. If you don't understand anything, let me know it again. Let me just start official language issue. ये diagram सबने बना लिया है? Everybody has made this? The first topic that we have is see, when we are discussing a topic, let us study the premise, or you can also call that background. Among the Indian leadership, even prior to independence, one thing was very clear, that India will never adopt any language as a national language, because India is proud of the diversity which is existing. So the leadership wanted to preserve that diversity. And that is why the concept of multiculturalism, the school of thought of multiculturalism, which we have adopted, was the salad bowl theory. So the premise says that Indian leadership was very clear that we will not accept any language, any one single language as a national language. India would be a land of multiple national languages. That was what was being iterated. The reason being, we were proud of our diverse culture. We wanted to preserve that diverse culture. Is that very clear? That is why the thought or the concept of multiculturalism in context of India was salad bowl. So to preserve or to put into effort the essence of salad bowl theory, both in letter and spirit, we decided we will not have any language as a national language. So, to implement the essence of salad bowl theory of multiculturalism, Indian leadership decided not to have any single language as a national language. Is that clear? However, it was seen that in order to carry out some official work, there has to be a common language. Otherwise, how the official work would be carried out? Let us say I am speaking a language which you don't understand, and the language that you are speaking I don't understand. So can there be any conversation between us? No. So in order to facilitate smooth working of the official work, there was a need of an official language. Is that clear? So for smooth facilitation, there was a need of an official language. Is that very clear? बस एक काम करो, the moment you write whatever is written on the screen, just any one of you just mention it on the response portal, that done, so that I can quickly move to the next screen. There was a need of official language. Now, there were two contenders for official language. One was Hindi. However, it should be Hindi or Hindustani, and whether it should be in Devanagari script or it should be in Urdu script. तो ये थोड़ा सा था कि हिंदी होनी चाहिए या हिंदुस्तानी होनी चाहिए. First. Second, whether it should be in Devanagari script or it should be in Urdu script. This was one. क्या लिख रही हूं मैं? And second contender was English. English was considered as a superior contender as compared to Hindi. There was a reason. Since it was the language of international diplomacy, it was the language of trade and commerce. It was a language which provides us exposure to Western ideas and values, and it was more enriched language as compared to Hindi. Reason being, due to availability of work in science, legal field, political discourse. English language में अच्छी books available थी, whether scientific field, legal field or political discourse. So it was assumed that English, assumed kya? It was a given fact that English is a better contender for official language at that given point of time, because it was a language of international diplomacy, because it was a language of trade and commerce, because it will provide us exposure to the Western ideas and values. It is a more enriched language because of the availability of work in this language in various fields, whether it is scientific field, it is technical field, the legal field or the political discourse. Is this clear? However, the leadership was very clear about the fact that the Indians are not going to accept English as the official language. Mahatma Gandhi said, no matter how enriched this language is, it will never be accepted by the masses as the official language because of unequal relations with the English men. Is that very clear? So एक लाइन में अगर आप ये व्यू पॉइंट लिखना चाहते हो तो लिख सकते हो, वैसे कुछ ऐसी बात नहीं है. That according to Mahatma Gandhi, irrespective of being a strong contender, English will never be accepted as the official language will never be accepted as the official language by the masses due to unequal relation with the Englishmen. In fact, Jawaharlal Nehru himself said that I love the English tongue in its place. That's there. I love the English tongue. But I am a very strong opponent of the fact that if English usurp the place which doesn't belong to it, that means if it becomes the main official language of India. So although I love the English tongue by its own, however, I am a very strong opponent of English if it usurps the place which doesn't belong to it. I accept that today English is a world language. As a result, I'm ready to provide it the status of second official language, but not the main official language. Obviously, you just need to listen to this. Kahin likhne nahi baithna hai. But this is what Jawaharlal Nehru said. That we know the matter of the fact that English is the world language in today's time. However, and by very nature of it, the language is also very good. And it has a very strong features to it. But despite that, it cannot usurp the place which doesn't belong to it. So for a country like India, English cannot be made the chief official language. But given its importance in the world scenario today, I would be according it the status of second official language. Is that very clear? So there were two major contenders. Let's get back to the story again. There were two major contenders. One was Hindustani, Hindi. Another one was English. So one thing was clear. English cannot be the official language. Now the contender left was whether we want to go for Hindustani or we want to go for Hindi. The leadership like Jawaharlal Nehru, Mahatma Gandhi, they were in the favor of calling it Hindustani. Okay. However, the proponents of Hindi belt were adamant that Hindi should be declared as the official language. So fine, it was considered and that argument, that bargaining was given effect and Hindi was to be declared as the official language. Now it was whether it would be in Devanagari script or Urdu script. So partition made it quite clear that it has to be in Devanagari script because Urdu was termed as a language of secession. So Urdu was termed by many as a language of secession, right? As a symbol of partition. So the only option left was Devanagari script. However, when that bargain was made between the proponents of the Hindi belt as well as the leadership, so the leadership agreed not to make Hindustani but Hindi as the official language in the Devanagari script. However, as an exchange to that bargain, the leadership asked them that English will continue as the associate official language at least till 1965. So that the non-Hindi speaking states get enough time to be comfortable with the language of Hindi, and secondly, Hindi proponents can also develop Hindi as a language, which initially was not in a developed phase, to create work in legal, political, scientific field, make them available in Hindi language. That was the task which were given to the Hindi supporters, the Hindi proponents. In the exchange of that, it was decided for at least 15 years till 1965, 26th of January 1965, till that time, English will be the associate official language. The reason being, there are many people who don't speak Hindi, who don't understand Hindi. So to give them enough time to gain comfortability in speaking this language, this buffer period was being created. Is that very clear? Is it making sense? Okay. So in the constitution under article 343, it was declared that Hindi in Devanagari script along with international numerals would be the official language. And English would be the associate official language till 1965. Is that clear? Is it making sense? So write down. Write down. The term. It's just the term. It's just the term. Write down. The adoption of official language, write down, I'm dictating now. The adoption of official language was a debatable issue not only during the framing. The adoption of official language was a debatable term not only during the framing of Indian Constitution, but even after that. But even after that. I hope you've written this English ka charo points. Next. Despite English being a strong contender, it was not accepted as the official language. It was not accepted as the official language. Next. Constitution under Article 343, if this point you have not written, Constitution under Article 343 declared Hindi in Devanagari script as the official language, declared Hindi in Devanagari script as the official language, and English as the associate language till 1965. And English as the associate language till 1965. Full stop. अब यहाँ पे रुक जाओ. Let's continue with the story. तो भाई ठीक है, everything was going fine. In fact, non-Hindi speaking leaders like C. Rajgopalachari, Suniti Kumar Chatterjee, they were the president of Hindi Pracharni Sabha. See the irony. So they were in the favor of Hindi being declared as the official language and they were not against this idea. So everything was fine. Then what went wrong? The thing that went wrong was the over-enthusiastic, the overzealous attitude of the Hindi proponents, who instead of simplifying the language, making non-Hindi speaking people comfortable with the language, instead of doing this, instead of developing Hindi as a language, they were not interested in doing any of these things. What they were busy doing? In the name of purity of the language, they started Sanskritizing the language. Just imagine if you've studied Sanskrit. I did that, I think, till class 8th. And trust me, the best thing about going in class 9th was that you no longer have to study Sanskrit. No matter, it was difficult. So just imagine Sanskritizing Hindi, right? Pathati, pathata, pathanti. We would have been interacting like this. And do you understand? Jab koi cheez, it is English as associate language. When there is something which you are not comfortable with, okay, let us say geography, let us say economics. There are many of us, maybe I'm giving you my personal example. That is why I said geography. Maybe geography is not very understandable for me. Okay, I don't relate much to it. Okay, so if the teacher comes and make it all the more complicated for me, obviously I'll feel more disenchanted कि यार एक तो मुझे वैसे ही नहीं समझ आ रही है, ऊपर से you are further complicating it for me. Did you get the point? Right. So anyhow, the non-Hindi speakers, they are not comfortable with the language. So instead of simplifying the language in the name of purity of the language, you are Sanskritizing it. And in fact, there was a very infamous incident where Jawaharlal Nehru, while addressing the parliament in 1958, he said that now I myself don't understand my speeches which are given in Hindi. Because when they are broadcasted, the speech is so Sanskritized that the speech which I have given myself, I'm not able to comprehend a single word. So the broadcasting was also made so Sanskritized, so complicated that the non-Hindi speaking people were becoming jittery. Do you understand, if a language is made official language, it is not only impacting your culture, it is also impacting your livelihood opportunities. Because if there is a specific language which is declared as the official language, then the medium of instructions in the higher educational institutes would be given in the particular language. The medium of government examination would be in that particular language. The access to the jobs in public sector enterprises would be governed by the fact whether you have the expertise in that language or not. So if a particular language is declared as an official language, it negatively impacts your culture and livelihood if you don't speak that particular language. Is that very clear? Is it making sense? So obviously they were becoming very detached, they were becoming apprehensive, they were becoming jittery. Is that clear? And this was happening for a very long period of time. But then I told you now, to organize people, to make them subjectively realize about the objective reality, there has to be a third party intervention. There has to be a force. This time that force was these non-Hindi speaking leaders who initially were in the favor of Hindi being declared as the official language. Rajgopalachari. He was anyway very disenchanted with Congress. So in 1959, he has defected from Congress and he had created his own party, Swatantra Party. Then Suniti Kumar Chatterjee. He was very disenchanted with this overzealous, over-enthusiastic attitude of these people to forcefully impose Hindi as the official language. So he was also very disenchanted. So that third party intervention was provided in the form of this leadership, which organized people, which mobilized people and made them realize about the subjective realization of objective reality. Is it making sense for everyone? एक दो लाइन लिखो फिर बात करते हैं. Write down. However, it was the over-enthusiastic attitude. However, it was the over-enthusiastic attitude of the Hindi proponents, which backfired and resulted into situation of supra-state regionalism. It was the over-enthusiastic attitude of Hindi supporters which backfired and created grounds for supra-state regionalism. Supra-state regionalism means group of states pitted against each other on an issue. So this time it was Hindi-speaking states versus non-Hindi-speaking states, and the issue was official language. Supra-state means group of states pitted against each other on a particular issue. Is that very clear? That was a term which was being used, Aditya, it was being said complicating, Sanskritizing, as in there were certain words which could have been Sanskritized, so they were Sanskritizing, right? And this is how it has been said, that in the name of purification of the language, it was being Sanskritized. ठीक है? और ऐसा थोड़ी ना होता है यार कि अगर ऐसे तो पाली, प्राकृत, they all are rooted फ्रॉम संस्कृत, तो ऐसा थोड़ी ना है कि संस्कृताइजिंग करेंगे तो पाली प्राकृत वाले बोलेंगे कि नहीं हमारे लिए तो ये लैंग्वेज ठीक है. ऐसा नहीं होता है. फॉर कॉमन मैन एनी वे अंडरस्टैंडिंग हिंदी वॉज अ चैलेंज. right? So that is why instead of simplifying that language, they were complicating the language. Is this very clear? हाँ ठीक है आदित्य. Okay. Aditya, give me 5 minutes. I'll read your question. Okay? Let's just finish this dictation part, then I'll read your full question. Where are we? Huh. So it given rise to supra-state regionalism. So obviously people were not happy with the fact that you are unnecessarily complicating the language, because it was creating apprehension among those set of students who believed, or set of people who believe, that their culture and their livelihood is going to get negatively impacted if a particular set of language is going to be declared as the official language. Because now they were finding it difficult to become comfortable with that aspect of the language. Is that clear for everyone? So this is what it was happening. So in order to address this situation of crisis, the leadership came up with an act, that is Official Language Act in 1963, which said English may continue to act as associate language post 1965. This is what was written in the Official Language Act. So English may continue to act as associate language post 1965. This is what was written in the Official Language Act. However, instead of writing the word shall, it was written may. It further generated apprehension among the people. The word here was not English shall continue. It was not giving you the guarantee. It said English may continue as the associate official language post 1965. So again the apprehension was there. What after Nehru? Maybe the next leadership after Nehru is not sensitive to the interest of non-Hindi speaking people. Then what will happen? And that apprehension proved to be true. 1964, Jawaharlal Nehru died and Lal Bahadur Shastri ji became the second Prime Minister. Lal Bahadur Shastri was not that sensitive to the interest of minorities. As a result, it was declared that from 26th January 1965, Hindi would be the sole official language. Not only that, it will be an alternative medium of examination in or for government services. So it will be an alternative medium with respect to public service examination. So that apprehension which was there among the non-Hindi speaking people further proved to be true when it was declared that 26th of January 1965 would be the day when Hindi will be declared as the sole official language and it would be treated as an alternative medium for the public service examination. Obviously, it is putting non-Hindi speaking people at a disadvantaged position. ऐसा नहीं था कि English में medium, English में आप exam नहीं दे सकते हो. That is there. But do you think that if Hindi is given as an alternative medium of examination, so non-Hindi speaking people still have to learn English to write the exam? But for the Hindi speaking people, they are writing the examination in their mother tongue. So anyway, they have more advantage over the non-Hindi speaking people. And due to this apprehension, it further resulted into disenchantment among the people. And anyway, the leadership was being provided where the subjective realization of objective reality has already happened. So as and when that day of 26 January 1965 was approaching, that day of 26 January 1965 was declared as the day of mourning. In fact, the same leaders who initially was talking about Hindi to be declared as the official language and English to be the associate official language, now they started demanding that English should be made the sole official language, because they said that English is as alien, to a Hindi speaking person. Similarly, Hindi is also alien to the non-Hindi speaking people. Is that very clear? So for non-Hindi speaking person, Hindi is as alien to them as English is for Hindi speaking people. So why we should be put at the disadvantaged position? So when initially we were saying that fine, Hindi should be the official language and English to be the associate official language, now we are saying let's make English as the associate official language and put both Hindi speaking and non-Hindi speaking people at the same pedestal, because both of them have to learn a new language, that is English. Is that very clear? So this day was declared as day of mourning and they started raising the slogan, Hindi never, English ever. Is this clear? However, then obviously Indo-Pak war वगैरह होने लग गई and we got embroiled in that. So nothing major happened after this. ये protest, हड़ताल, agitations वगैरह हो रहे थे and it was a major issue. That day तो crisis was very high and there were a lot of students who have literally burned themselves to death because they never wanted Hindi to be declared as the sole official language because it was putting their livelihood under severe threat. So all of that was happening, but during that year, nothing happened after this. The reason being that other aspects were more prominent. So India got indulged in war with Pakistan and everything. However, after that, we know that Lal Bahadur Shastri died in Tashkent. So post which Indira Gandhi came to power, and finally in 1967, Official Language Amendment Act was passed. And this act gave the ultimate veto power in the hands of non-Hindi speaking state. It said that English will continue as the associate official language till the time non-Hindi speaking people want. Is that very clear? So overall, this issue was brought to an end with the passage of Official Language Amendment Act. Is that clear? Is that clear? Is it making sense? Write down. कहाँ तक लिखा है? Did you write Official Language Amendment Act? What was the last thing that you've written? It given rise to supra-state regionalism. I think this is what you wrote, right? Next, write down. 1963, Official Language Act was introduced. 1963 Official Language Act was introduced to ensure Official Language Act was introduced to ensure the use of English language beyond 1965. Use of English language beyond 1965. However, the text of the act was ambiguous. The text of the act was ambiguous. Text of the act was ambiguous. Hence, it generated apprehension. Hence, it generated apprehension. Finally, next point, finally, in 1967, In 1967, Official Language Amendment Act was passed. Official Language Amendment Act was passed, which ensured, finally, 1967, Official Language Amendment Act was passed, which ensured indefinite policy of bilingualism. Is that clear? Is it making sense? Now, as far as Aditya, your doubt is there, let me just make one thing very clear. जब हम हिस्ट्री के किसी चीज की बात करते हैं, so we present the history as it is being presented to us. So this is the book that we have, Bipin Chandra. Let me read out the phrase for you. A major weakness of the Hindi protagonist was that instead of developing a simple standard language which would get wide acceptance, they tried to Sanskritize the language, replacing commonly understood words with newly manufactured and little understood ones in the name of purity of language. This made it more and more difficult for non-Hindi speakers to understand or to learn the new version. In fact, All India Radio also took to Sanskritizing its Hindi news bulletins. In fact, Nehru once complained that he could not comprehend his own Hindi speeches which were being broadcast in the name of purification. See, this is what I was trying to say. Let me come down to your question. Before I read your question, whatever the doubts that you have, when we talk about certain incidences, just listen to me very carefully, everyone, since you've already studied your history and you might be knowing it, that when we study any specific event, that for example, when I was talking about the culture and the livelihood, that was a concept. That's a concept of subjective realization of objective reality. But when I'm talking about an event which has happened in the past, right, I would be presenting, I was not personally present in that event, right? I would be presenting that historical event from the perspective of a historian, right? And in context of UPSC, one of the historian whose work is accepted when you write UPSC answer is Bipin Chandra, without doubt. Do we agree to it? So when we are talking about historical developments or historical events, to be very precise, the events are being told in the class as from the perspective of that particular historian. So if I'm talking about, let us say we'll discuss integration of princely state, I'll give you the perspective of Ramchand Guha. He has done a very phenomenal work. Similarly, I'll be giving you the perspective of VP Menon because he was present that time. I was not present. Maybe in my previous birth, I really don't know, but I don't remember whether I was present or not. So when we are discussing history, the events are told with respect to how they are being presented by different historians. That is why the history can be very different when it is being read from the perspective of different people. For example, Romila Thapar has written something else. For example, Ramchand Guha has written something else. For example, Bipin Chandra has written something else. But since Bipin Chandra's work is widely accepted, so this is how. So that is why when you said, no, you didn't understand that how we are saying that Sanskritization of Hindi would be a challenge for non-Hindi speaking people. That is how Bipin Chandra has written that Hindi was being Sanskritized, and they were trying to, instead of simplifying the language, they were trying to add new words which are free from any alien influences. That is how it is being presented. Is that very clear? Is this very clear? Is it making sense for everyone out there? Okay? Can we proceed? Write down a question. Write down a question. Discuss the challenges confronted, discuss the challenges confronted, discuss the challenges confronted by the Indian leadership with respect to language issues, with respect to language issues in the initial decades post-independence, in the initial decades post-independence, in the initial decades post-independence, in the initial decades post-independence. Is this clear for everyone? Okay? Somebody asked me कि act वाली बात. Now did you understand what was 1967 Act? That it was an official language amendment act which clearly specified that the right of the veto power is being given to non-Hindi speaking people. You can continue with English as the associate official language till the time you want. Is this clear for everyone? Can you answer the question which is being given? It is a 10-marker question. Just think about it and let me know if you can answer that question. See, whenever we are writing any event, that is always advisable that one should start with a premise. I'll tell you a reason. When you will study post independence, तो उसमें ना हम प्राइम मिनिस्टीरियल एरा के थ्रू पढ़ते हैं. नेहरूवियन एरा, शास्त्रीज एरा, इंदिरा गांधीज एरा. So in Nehruvian era, there are two topics that you study, that is official language issue and linguistic reorganization of states. So rather than covering that in post-independence, I'm covering it here. Because anyhow, we were studying linguistic diversity. ठीक है ना? So whenever you are studying a particular event, you should always start with the premise. The background should be clear. And the irony was that we were in the favor, the leadership was in the favor of linguistic reorganization because we wanted our regional languages to be further developed. And it was believed that if you want your regional languages to develop further, it can be done if the states are reorganized on the specific linguistic lines. Similarly, if you want massive spread of literacy, if you want universal education, at least at elementary level, then the educational instructions should be given in mother tongue, and which again would be feasible if you are redrawing your boundaries on the linguistic lines. Is that clear? And lastly, if you want to realize your democracy in both letter and spirit, then politics and administration should be carried out in the language which is commonly understood by the people there. Is that clear? So given these factors, there was a very strong case for linguistic reorganization of states. However, then what went wrong? Premise से क्या होता है, एक background मिल जाता है, बस और कुछ नहीं है. Once you are done with this, please let me know. However, then there were certain issues which created doubt in the mind of leadership with respect to linguistic reorganization. That is why this task was put on hold. ठीक है ना? However, at the time of independence, there were other major issues which were confronting India. Which were confronting our leadership. There were other major issues which were confronting our leadership. For example, integration of princely states. Within that, the major issue was Kashmir issue, because of which there was the first Indo-Pak war. There were other major issues which were confronting India at the time of independence. Is that clear? As a result, the leadership believed any attempt to redraw the boundaries of state on linguistic lines will lead to dislocations or disruptions, any word you can use. So at that point of time, anyway, the territorial integrity of India was under threat because of the problem of integration of princely states. There was other major issue which was pressing our leadership, that was Kashmir issue. Already we had lost a certain part of Kashmir as POK, right? So Indo-Pak war which had commenced during that time. So there were many challenges which were confronting Indian leadership. So it was perceived by them that any attempt to redraw the boundaries of the state on linguistic lines might lead to political, administrative and economic dislocations, for which the Indian leadership was yet not prepared. International compulsions itne zyada the, humne non-alignment ki baat kari thi, both US as well as Soviet were upset with us. So there were many challenges which were being confronted by Indian leadership at that point of time. Is that very clear? Theek hai. However, there was a very strong demand which was coming. So as a result, in order to look into further probability or possibility of linguistic reorganization, there were different committees which were established. The first being the S.K. Dhar committee. S.K. Dhar committee said, although idea is desirable, that is linguistic reorganization, but time is not right. As in this particular time, it is not advisable because it might lead to disintegration. Because there would be princely state. There would be some who would not appreciate the idea, is that very clear, of redrawing the boundaries. So the first committee which was established was the S.K. Dhar committee, who said that the idea is desirable, however, the time is not right or suitable for any kind of reorganization of the boundaries. Similarly, there was another committee which was further established, that is JVP committee. Jawaharlal Nehru, Vallabhbhai Patel and Pattabhi Sita Ramaya. There were three people who were there and a committee was formed. They also said that although the idea is desirable, but the time is not right. However, they said, if, एक addition था, if any popular demand, then we will look into it. We will consider. So there was a very popular demand, that is to bifurcate Telugu speaking population from the Tamil speaking population and creation of Andhra and Tamil Nadu. This was a very popular demand. So this committee wanted to look into the demand of creation of Andhra and Tamil Nadu on linguistic lines. However, there was a bone of contention who would get Madras. The committee said both linguistically as well as geographically, Madras should go to Tamil Nadu. However, the leadership, the people of Andhra were hell-bent that they cannot give up on Madras. And as a result, the talks failed. And this is what Jawaharlal Nehru and the other leadership were fearing. That obviously there would be some who would not agree to any specific kind of redrawing of the boundaries on linguistic line. There would be some who would be losing out on certain territory. There would be some who would be gaining the territories. So it might create the situation of unrest in the society, and which happened also. So in this context, when the demand was not accepted and this entire negotiation was failed, then there was a person, his name was Potti Sriramalu. He sat for fast onto death. Potti Sriramalu. He sat for fast unto death, and after 58 days of fasting, he died. And when he died, it was followed by 3 days of non-stop protests, hartals, demonstration, and the situation was of grave social unrest. As a result, keeping that in mind, the government agreed to redraw the boundaries with respect to the Telugu speaking population as well as the Tamil speaking population. So when this agitation proved to be a success, there was having a domino effect, and the demand from other areas also started emerging. So to respect those linguistic aspirations of the people, in 1956, finally, there was another commission which was established, State Reorganization Commission, also known as Fazl Ali Commission. Ultimately, it led to creation of 14 states and 6 centrally administered territories. Only 2 states that time were not bifurcated. One was Maharashtra and second was Punjab. So finally, 1960s mein Maharashtra and 1966 mein Punjab was bifurcated. Is that clear? Punjab is important from the post-independence point of view, that we will discuss in post-independence lecture. Is that clear? क्योंकि पंजाब क्राइसिस हम पढ़ेंगे जब हम इंदिरा गांधी पढ़ेंगे. So very quickly write down. ये लिख लिया है ना सबने? Write down. Various committees were established. Such as S.K. Dhar Committee. Various committees were established, such as S.K. Dhar Committee, JVP Committee, full stop. However, due to the growing protest, finally, government conceded to the demands of linguistic reorganization. And Fazl Ali Commission was established. It provided for 14 states. And 6 centrally administered territories. 14 states and 6 centrally administered territories. However, Bombay and Punjab were reorganized later. Bombay and Punjab were reorganized later in 1960s and 66 respectively. However, Bombay and Punjab were reorganized later in 1960 and 66 respectively. एक overall concluding remark लिखो. According to Rajni Kothari, political scientist. Remember, we discussed the role of caste in politics. According to Rajni Kothari, linguistic reorganization has been functional as it removed the major source of discord and created homogeneous political units which could be administered through the medium that the vast majority of population understood. However, linguistic reorganization did not resolve all the problems related to linguistic diversity as even after creation of linguistic states, there were various minority languages spoken in that particular state. Even after creation of linguistic states, there were minority languages spoken in that particular state. I told you, there are many languages which are spoken in India. As a result, it was like opening up of a Pandora box. As the demand for linguistic states are still prevalent. For example, demand for creation of Gorkha land out of West Bengal, linguistic expression. Similarly, demand for Mithila state out of Bihar. It is believed 1/3 of the population of Bihar speaks Maithili. So they are demanding creation of a separate Mithila state. So ऐसा नहीं है that with linguistic reorganization of the state, the issues related to linguistic conflict has come to an end. The reason being, even after creation of linguistic states, the people who were residing were not homogeneous with respect to language. There were different languages which were being spoken in that particular state. So the occasional expressions are there with respect to linguistic state. For example, Gorkhaland. For example, Mithila state. I'll repeat, even after creation of linguistic state, there were demands from the linguistic minorities of that particular state. Linguistic minorities of that particular state. Linguistic minorities of that particular state, since we are extremely linguistically diverse. Since we are extremely linguistically diverse. Full stop. Hence, it was more like opening of Pandora box. Hence, it was more like opening up of Pandora box. Opening up of Pandora box. For example, demand for Gorkhaland, Mithila state, etc. Linguistic chauvinism, full stop, linguistic chauvinism also finds occasional, Bodoland is not a linguistic issue. It's more of an ethnic issue. So, कहाँ थे हम? Where were we? हाँ, एक लाइन और लिखो. Linguistic chauvinism also finds occasional expression. Linguistic chauvinism also finds occasional expression. For example, remember National Education Policy? We decided to make Hindi in the draft of National Education Policy. It was decided that Hindi would be made a compulsory language across India, so as to promote Hindi also and that three language formula. However, this was outrightly being protested by the South Indian states. So obviously that further forced the government to withdraw this provision. So the final national education policy that we got does not have a mention about this. However, the original draft which was being put forward. So linguistic chauvinism do find occasional expression. You are trying to impose your linguistic identities over others, despite the fact that we have to respect the individual cultural identity. So एक लाइन में लिखो, the place where you've written linguistic chauvinism often find occasional expression. For example, the provision of making Hindi compulsory across India as mentioned in the draft of National Education Policy. Draft लिख देना क्योंकि फाइनल में नहीं है ये प्रोविजन. इसके बाद बहुत बवाल हुआ था, इसलिए इस प्रोविजन को विड्रॉ कर लिया गया था. Is this clear for everyone out there? Write down a question. Can you answer this question? Hindi was being made compulsory across India. The language Hindi was being made compulsory in the draft of National Education Policy. However, later it was withdrawn. To what extent linguistic reorganization of states have contributed to Indian unity? Discuss. To what extent linguistic reorganization of states has contributed to or have contributed to Indian unity? Discuss. Can you answer this question? If I say, let us make this question a 10-marker question in 150 words, can you answer this question? जल्दी बताओ, कैन यू आंसर दिस? आर यू श्योर? अच्छे से क्वेश्चन पढ़ो और बताओ. Manish, make this the assignment question. Everyone out there is sure? ठीक है? To what extent it has contributed to Indian unity? So what was linguistic reorganization of state? How it has contributed to Indian unity? The words of Rajni Kothari, and how to certain extent it was like opening of a Pandora box, right? It was a UPSC question. Is that very clear? So it's a very direct question, directly asked from Bipin Chandra, and this is how the answer has to be written. Linguistic chauvinism. हाँ दिव्यांश, यही है. बिल्कुल बिल्कुल समीम is absolutely correct. Is that very clear? In fact, if exactly the words of Jawaharlal Nehru, the linguistic mosaic would contribute to Indian unity. That is what he said. That this linguistic mosaic will in fact contribute to Indian unity. Hence, the aspirations of people should be respected and we should redraw the boundaries on linguistic lines. Absolutely, Ravi. Absolutely. Yes. They feel that they have been given the right to self-determination. Absolutely. Yes, Anju. So all of you got the point, how the question has to be answered. Now, I'm generally asking, this is how we teach every now and then, right? This is, it's given in your Bipin Chandra. And this is how UPSC has asked the question. So do you find that if you read standard books, it is never going to disappoint? That is what I'm trying to say. But yes, I do agree that you guys don't have enough time, and Bipin Chandra in itself is a bulky book. So if you're not writing this year's attempt, maybe that, you know, you're not age-wise qualified or something like that, and you have time for your preparation, do read these standard books. Nothing can substitute standard books. And those who are writing their attempt this year, obviously you are not going to find time to read standard books, so we are reading it for you. That is another story. But the point here is read your newspapers then. Because again, nothing can substitute your newspaper. If you really believe that just going through Vision's material, or for that matter, any coaching institute's material would be helpful, yes, it would be helpful in consolidating. It can be helpful in revising. बट वो जो फर्स्ट हैंड इंफॉर्मेशन होती है ना, फर्स्ट हैंड अंडरस्टैंडिंग होती है बाय रीडिंग द आर्टिकल ऑफ द न्यूज़पेपर, दैट टाइम यू टेंड टू रिलेट, अच्छा ये वाली न्यूज में यहां ऐड कर सकता था, या ये वाला पर्सपेक्टिव कुड बी यूज देयर. तो वो जो एक फर्स्ट हैंड ब्रेनस्टॉर्मिंग होती है, दैट वुड नॉट बी देयर इफ यू नॉट रीडिंग योर न्यूज़पेपर. So read your newspaper no matter what. Every day dedicate 1 hour to reading the newspaper. Do not substitute that with anything else. Everything else can wait, but not reading the newspaper. Because many a times हो सकता है ना, हमारे point of view से वो news important नहीं थी. हमें लगा उस पर कभी question नहीं आएगा. ठीक है, but question आ गया. और आप तो सिर्फ वो पढ़कर गए थे जो करंट अफेयर्स हमने बनाया था. Do you realize हमें एग्जाम नहीं लिखना है. Exam has to be written by you. So don't compromise on that. Is that clear? Okay. So this was a direct question which was asked from the book, and yeah, this is the answer. Next we are going to talk about is religious diversity. This is how we are going to proceed. Once you are done, please let me know. Vaibhav, um, I'll conclude the lecture at 3:30. Okay, take थोड़ा आराम कर लो, मैं धीरे धीरे पढ़ा देती हूँ. बट आई कंक्लूड द लेक्चर एट 3:30. तो क्या ब्रेक देना ना, मतलब आई अंडरस्टैंड, ऐसे तुम लोग ब्रेक मांगते नहीं हो, यू आर ओनली आस्किंग टुडे. तो जस्ट रिलैक्स, आई एम नॉट गोइंग टू टीच वेरी फास्ट. इंपॉर्टेंट कॉन्सेप्ट है, आराम से पढ़ाऊंगी मैं. See, as we are linguistically diverse, similarly, we are religiously diverse also. Okay? So the extent of diversity, again, there is nothing to teach in this context, but you should know. If in case you get a question, then you can talk about that we are extremely religiously diverse also. And with respect to religious diversity, we are inter-religiously diverse also, and we are intra-religiously diverse also. Inter matlab, you have different religions, you have Hinduism, you have Islam, you have Christianity, Jainism, Buddhism, all of the religion that is existing. However, if I talk about intra-religious diversity, so within the religion, there exists diversity with respect to different sects, with respect to different cults, right? So just for the understanding, sect is basically the offshoot from the existing religion. बस एक लाइन में दे रही हूं, डेफिनेशन लिखने की जरूरत नहीं है, इट इज ओनली फॉर योर अंडरस्टैंडिंग. द ऑफशूट फ्रॉम द एग्जिस्टिंग रिलीजन. ठीक है, द ऑफशूट फ्रॉम द एग्जिस्टिंग रिलीजन ऑन द बेसिस ऑफ different interpretation of the ideology of the religion. Every religion has its own core ideology. That core ideology can be interpreted differently by different set of people. So based on different interpretation of the core ideology of the religion, when there is an offshoot from the existing religion, for example, Shia and Sunni, that is sect. Did you get the point? For example, Vaishnavites, Shaivite, Smarta, all of this is what? They are the sects within Hinduism. Is this clear for everyone? So the sect is the offshoot from the existing religion based on different interpretation of the core ideology. Simple words. Is that clear? Take it. The sect is a very close-knit organization. This is only for your reference. Do not write anything. It's a very close-knit organization. I'm going very slow. And the membership is very rigid. ऐसा नहीं है today you are Shia, tomorrow you can be Sunni. No. The membership is very rigid. It's a close-knit organization. And any kind of dissent is not tolerated. That is what is sect. Whereas if I talk about cult, this is not majorly for the GS people student, but you should know in general what is sect, what is cult. Cult is the result of cultural innovation. Cultural importation. You are importing some culture from outside. That gives rise to formation of a cult. For example, Sahaj Yoga is a cult. Brahma Kumaris is a cult. Art of Living is a cult. Did you get the point? It is a result of cultural innovation or cultural importation. You are importing it or you are innovating it. And the membership is not very rigid. ऐसा थोड़ी ना that if you are a member of Art of Living, you cannot, worship any other god, or you cannot worship, visit any other cult. ऐसा कुछ भी नहीं है. It is more like a consumer service. You are visiting a cult because you are seeking something from it. For example, let us say peace of mind. Somebody told me that if Smriti, you want peace of mind, you should visit Art of Living sessions. I said, fine. I started going to Art of Living sessions. But after visiting or having few sessions, I realized कि नहीं यार, यहाँ मुझे वो नहीं मिल रहा, वो service नहीं मिल रही which I want. So then somebody suggested, why don't you go to Brahma Kumaris? I said, okay, fine. Let me go to Brahma Kumaris. I went there. I liked it, but then ultimately that thing was not evident which I wanted. Somebody suggested me, you should go to Sahaj Yoga. So I went to Sahaj Yoga, and then I realized, okay, this is what I was looking for. This is the peace of mind I was talking about. This is the kind of connect that I was looking for. This is the spiritual development which I was seeking. Did you get the point? So here the membership is not very rigid. It is more like a customer service. Whichever agency is providing you the services, you are sticking to it. Is that very clear? So this is the difference between sect and cult. This is only for the purpose of knowing what is sect and what is cult. Sect is very closed. It is very rigid. Any kind of dissent is not tolerated. Cult mein aisa kuch nahi hai. It's a loose knit organization. It's a loose network of people. Having said that, so you have diversity, which is extending the inter-religious diversity. On the similar lines, you have intra-religious diversity. Is that clear? ठीक है. It's fundamentalism. It's religious fundamentalism. सेक्ट और कितने सिंपल वर्ड्स में बताऊं बच्चे? शिया और सुन्नी क्यों बने थे? कौन प्रॉफिट मोहम्मद का सक्सेसर होगा? That was the basis of division between Shia and Sunni. So based on the core ideology, if there are certain set of people who are having different understanding upon the interpretation of core ideology, they will create their own groups. They will create their own sects. Is that very clear? वैष्णवाइट्स हैं, विष्णु को मानते हैं. शिवाइट्स हैं, शिव को मानते हैं. शक्ता है, स्मरता है. ठीक है. So there are different god within Hinduism that they are worshipping. So the core ideology, कोई बोलेगा कि ब्रह्मा जी सुप्रीम थे, कोई बोलता है कि नहीं विष्णु सुप्रीम थे, कोई बोलता है कि नहीं शिव सुप्रीम थे, कोई बोलता है नहीं दुर्गा सुप्रीम शक्ति है. सो कोर आइडियोलॉजी का जब डिफरेंट इंटरप्रिटेशन होता है, इट रिजल्ट्स इनटू डिफरेंट sects. Is that very clear? Is this clear for everyone? ठीक है. Is it making sense, Shweta, now? The sect and cult are just for your understanding that when there is differential interpretation of the core ideology of any religion, it results into formation of an offshoot of the existing religion. ठीक है. That is sect. ठीक. Now, with respect to, this is only for the understanding that this is how the extent of diversity is existing. Now, with respect to the religious diversity, one of the major problem that we confront is communalism. So the first question that arises in our mind is, what do you mean by communalism? Is that clear? Take it. So write down. Write down. Communalism refers to an ideology. Communalism refers to an ideology. Communalism refers to an ideology according to which society is divided, according to which society is divided into different religious community having different secular interest, having different secular interest. Here secular, if you remember, socio political economic interest. So write down, communalism refers to an ideology according to which society is divided into different religious communities having different secular interest, having different secular interest. Having different secular interest. Secular as in socio-political economic interest. Now listen carefully. A man of religion may not be communal. For example, if you are taking pride in your religion, if you abide by the customs and practices of your religion, does not make you communal. If you are a very strong devotee of your religion or the religious ideals, that does not make you communal. So a man of religion is not communal, but a man who practices his politics by linking it with religion is definitely communal. So write down. A man of religion is not communal. So if you practice your religion, if you are a devout follower of your religious customs and practices, that does not make you communal. However, if you practice your politics by linking it with religion, it is communal. So it can also be written as communalism is nothing but mazhab ki siyasi dukandari. And for those who are not comfortable with Hindi, the English translation is political trade in religion. So what is communalism? It is either mazhab ki siyasi dukandari or communalism is political trade in religion. Political trade in religion. There was a 10-marker question asked by UPSC. Distinguish between religiousness and communalism, and by giving one example from post-independence India, show how former has turned into latter. So for the second part of the answer, we'll discuss Babri Masjid demolition, right? That we'll discuss in post-independence. And this was a 10-marker question. So the first part of the question, which was distinguish between religiousness and communalism. Can you do it now? If somebody asks you, so differentiate between religiousness and communalism, and let us say it's a 2-marker or a 3-marker question, can you do it? Can you answer this question? Okay? So did you understand what we are trying to discuss here? That you being religious doesn't make you communal. For example, why am I discussing this topic? So when I teach you secularism, we'll realize that when we treat someone as secular, we have a misconstrued notion. If someone is secular, that means someone is anti-religion. And if someone is religious, that means he is communal. So there has to be an understanding that being religious doesn't make you communal, and being secular doesn't mean you are anti-religion. So these misconstrued notions in the society needs to be addressed. Is that clear? Before we proceed, एक line में लिखो. Absolutely, Sameem. We can say that. एक line में लिखो. Communalism in broad sense means strong attachment to one's own community. Communalism in a broad sense means strong attachment to one's own community. Full stop. Positive aspect of communalism is it ensures that individual has a strong affinity towards his own community, Positive aspect of communalism is it shows individual has a strong affinity towards his own community, and hence individual works for socio-economic upliftment of that community, works for socio-economic upliftment of his community. However, in negative sense, it's an ideology. In negative sense, it is an ideology which emphasizes upon having a separate identity In negative sense, it is an ideology which emphasizes upon having a separate identity of your religious group in relation to others, having a separate identity of religious group in relation to others, and there is a tendency to promote your own interest. There is a tendency to promote your own interest at the expense of others. There is a tendency to promote your own interest at the expense of others. Is that very clear? ठीक है. There are different manifestations of communalism. This you might have studied in history. Mild, moderate, and extreme. There are three manifestations of communalism: mild, moderate, and extreme. Mild communalism. When people belonging to same community have same secular interest. Second, when people belonging to different communities have different secular interest. However, in extreme, not only different interest, but mutually hostile interest, antagonistic interest. That is extreme form of communalism. Now you will not give the example. We will not give any such examples. Just write hate speech against religious minority. Hate speeches against minorities, religious minorities. You will not give any specific example. We all know the reality. We never know who's correcting the paper, and ultimately we have certain selfish objective to clear the exam. So we will not give any specific examples specifically in context of controversial or sensitive issues. Just writes hate speeches against religious minorities. Okay? Next. So did you understand the three things? Mild, moderate, and extreme. Mild, when people belonging to same community have same secular interest. When people belonging to different community have different socio-political economic interest. That is moderate communalism. However, when you believe that since you belong to different communities, you not only have different socio-political economic interest, but those interests are mutually hostile. They are mutually antagonistic. Matlab, one can progress only at the expense of other. That kind of communalism is extreme communalism, which is causing the social unrest or which is causing the problem with peace and harmony in the current context. That we are made to believe that one religious group can progress only at the expense of other religious groups. Is that very clear for everyone? Have I discussed zero-sum game in your theory in your class? Or a constant view of power? Did I ever mention that in the class? Have I ever mentioned zero-sum or a constant view of power? Because this mutual, जो hostile interest आता है, that concept is borrowed from here. It is believed that in society, which is not true, this is a theoretical interpretation. Okay, fine, I got. It is a theoretical interpretation. It's a zero-sum game, where we are made to believe that overall power in society is constant. Which implies if anyone is gaining power, that implies the other is losing it. However, that might not be true. Maybe the power in the society can increase if you improve the infrastructure, if you generate more job opportunities. The overall share of pie or the overall size of pie can increase. And when the overall size of pie will increase, then everyone's share will also increase. Right? So it is not true that, the power in the society is constant. That is one perspective which is being used often to pit one group against other, which says that overall power in society is constant. So let us say this is a society which has 100 power. I'm giving you a means to explain the concept. On one hand, let us say we have Hindus. On the other hand, let us say we have Muslims. Okay. Ideal situation, let us say Hindus have 50 power, Muslim have 50 power. अब वो लॉजिक मत देना कि ये पॉपुलेशन 84% है, वो 14% है. कहने का मतलब है कि जितनी पावर होनी चाहिए उतनी है. Let us assume कि it is a good situation which is being created. However, let us say the power of Muslims increased to 75. Automatically, Hindus are assuming that their power has reduced to 25. Is that very clear? You are made to believe by certain fringe elements or anti-social elements in the society कि see, their status is improving. That means their status has improved at the cost of your status. So without even realizing, you are made to believe that see, your progress has deteriorated. Your status has deteriorated because it is only at your expense that their interest is getting promoted. Is that very clear? Similarly, remove Hindu and Muslims from here. Put here natives and migrants. We are made to believe, natives, that see, it is these migrants who are prospering and they are prospering at your cost. So it is the migrants who are prospering, and these prosperity which the migrants are achieving, it is at the cost of natives. तभी तो son of soil होता है. Similarly, male and female. When one of the party member of the current ruling government told to the male vote bank that, you are unemployed because the women are entering into the labor market. It is not our fault. We have created jobs, but you are not getting jobs because it is the female who is entering into the labor market. That is why you are remaining unemployed. What logic? So basically, you are pitting one section of the society against other. Everyone does that, Anju. It's not about the specific leader. The people who use these identities, the ethnic, cultural identities to pit one group against the other, this is how they do that. Is this very clear? So whether it is natives versus migrants, whether it is upper caste versus lower caste, whether it is Hindu versus Muslim, whether it is male versus female, every section of the society is being used by the fringe elements to play their politics by pitting them against each other. And that concept is zero-sum game. That the overall power in the society will always be constant. So if someone is gaining power, it is happening at the expense of others. ऐसा क्यों? The size of the power, the size of the pie can increase, no? इज दिस वेरी क्लियर? तो यहां तो मेहनत नहीं करेंगे कि अच्छा इन्वेस्टमेंट करें, सोशल इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर इंप्रूव करें, स्किल डेवलपमेंट करें, क्रेडिट को ईज करें, ठीक है, और अपॉर्चुनिटीज जनरेट करें फॉर एम्प्लॉयमेंट. वो नहीं, एक दूसरे को आपस में लड़ा दो, काम ही खत्म. जहां पे इंस्टेड ऑफ ब्लेमिंग द गवर्नेंस फॉर योर deprived state, you start blaming the other religious, cultural, caste, gender groups for your deprivation. We don't ever question the government, whether it is whichever government. We are just trying to fight it among each other. Is that very clear for everyone? Did you understand? So this results into extreme form of communalism. Actually, ये समझाया सिर्फ इसलिए है, when we are made to believe that not only our interests are different, but they are mutually hostile or antagonistic interest. That is, one can progress only at the expense of other. One can progress only at the expense of other. Is this clear for everyone? Take care. The next topic that we have to talk about is the types of communalism. there are 6 different types of communalism. There is a reason why we are studying different types. If we say, is communalism a threat to national integration? Right? If that is the question. So not all type of communalism is a threat to national integration. If the communalism is of first 3 types, that is assimilationist, welfareist, retreatist, then it is not a threat to national integration. However, if it is of the nature retaliatory, separatist, secessionist, then it is a threat to national integration. So in order to understand this, we are discussing this. Just for the information, it's a perspective given by T.K. Oman, right? So maybe in security, when you are studying separatist movement, so you might study in the perspective that separating from the Indian Union. Whereas in this, we are studying separate as different from secessionist. So ये ध्यान रखना कि जब आप कोई कॉन्सेप्ट पढ़ते हो तो वो किसी के पर्सपेक्टिव से पढ़ते हो, इसीलिए क्लैरिफिकेशन दे रही हूं that it is T.K. Oman's perspective that there are different types of communalism. I am discussing these types of communalism with you only to answer the possibility of the question, that in case the question is asked that is it a threat to national integration or not, then what kind of answer can be written. So that is why I am discussing this with you. ठीक है ना? और कभी ना कभी क्वेश्चन आ ही जाता है. अब जब मैंने ये डेफिनेशन पढ़ाई थी दैट अ मैन ऑफ रिलीजन इज नॉट कम्युनल बट वन हु प्रैक्टिस, तो उसके हमें तो नहीं उम्मीद थी ना दैट यूपीएससी पूछेगा, बट यूपीएससी ने पूछ ही लिया रिलीजियसनेस एंड कम्युनलिज्म में क्या डिफरेंस होता है. So the point here is you should be prepared from all possible set of questions which can be asked. Assimilationist communalism. Write down the first thing. When, I hope you've written all the 6. When a larger religious community tries to assimilate, when the larger religious community tries to assimilate the smaller communities, when the larger religious community tries to assimilate the smaller religious community within its fold, such that the latter's culture, the smaller ones, the latter's culture gets subdued. It is referred as assimilationist communalism. For example, Hindu Code Bill. Now the name of the code bill is Hindu Code Bill, right? But it is applicable to Hindus, Buddhist, Jain and Sikhs. However, the name of the code bill is Hindu Code Bill, but it is applicable to different religious communities like Sikh, Buddhist, Jain. So this is nothing but an example of assimilationist communalism, right? Similarly, I remember in the first lecture, जब मैं introduce कर रही थी, and I was talking about the tribal perspectives, assimilation, isolation, integration. I think I have discussed that example. So in that context, the policy of assimilation, which was put forward by G.S. Ghure, who considered that tribals are nothing but backward Hindus. Hence, they should be brought within the fold of Hinduism. So you are trying to bring tribals within the fold of Hindu culture. You are trying to assimilate them so that the latter's culture gets subdued. So these are nothing but the example of assimilationist communalism. These are examples, ठीक है? And this has happened many a time that we have tried to bring the smaller communities within the fold of the larger community so as to bring about certain kind of homogeneity, right? So that is assimilationist communalism. This is just an example. Okay? Similarly, we have welfareist. Right now, when the people belonging to a particular religious community, when people belonging to the particular religious community works for the welfare of the members of that community, socio-economic upliftment. So when people belonging to a particular religious community works for the welfare of the people belonging to that religious community is referred as welfareist community. For example, providing scholarships if you belong to that religious groups, or providing hostel facilities, और रेसिडेंशियल अकोमोडेट उसी में आ जाएगा, जॉब अपॉर्चुनिटीज कर दो, जॉब अपॉर्चुनिटीज. So this is nothing but welfareist communalism, and there is no harm. You are doing it for the welfare of your own people. You are not causing any harm to others. You're just working for the welfare of your own people by providing them scholarship, hostel facility, employment opportunities, etc. So that is nothing but welfareist communalism. Then we have retreatist. Actually, when this perspective of retreatist was given, it was given in context of a religious community that is known as Bahi community. Bahism is the youngest religion which has emerged in 19th century in context of Iran. And Bahism as a religion is based on, just let me finish, is based on principle of unity of God, unity of religion, unity of mankind. Retreat word समझते हो? आपको बहिज्म की डिटेल में नहीं जाना है. Retreat word समझते हो? वापस आना. Retreat yourself, moving back. ठीक है? When I say you practice your politics by linking it with religion, that is communalism. ठीक है? And when you are asking your members not to participate in politics based on religion, then it is retreating communalism. I'll again reiterate. I said, when you practice your politics by linking it with religion, it is communal. Okay, communalism. But when on the same religious lines, I'm asking my members not to participate in party politics, I'm asking them to retreat from politics on religious lines, that is retreatist communalism. So again, this is not a threat to national integration. Write down, retreatist communalism. The members of Bahi community are forbidden. The members of Bahi community are forbidden to participate in the party politics, are forbidden to participate in party politics, since it is based on the ideology, of unity of God. It is based on the ideology of unity of God, religion and mankind. Unity of God, religion, mankind. Hence, since it is based on unity of God, religion, mankind, hence, any prejudice on the basis of political aspect is believed to destroy this unity. Any prejudice based on political aspect, racial aspect, religious aspect, etc. is believed to destroy this unity, is believed to destroy this unity. इसीलिए, don't write इसीलिए, that is why I'm saying that is why these people have been asked to retreat. Do not participate in party politics. You need to retreat from participation in party politics, and this reason behind this retreatment is based on religion. That is why it is retreatist communalism. Is this very clear? However, when I talk about retaliatory, this is nothing but zero-sum game, where one religious group is pitted against another religious group because they are made to believe that their interests are mutually hostile. So retaliatory, write down. It is a violent manifestation. It is a violent manifestation as communities believe, as the religious community, it is having a violent manifestation. It is having a violent manifestation as communities believe that they have mutually hostile interest. They have mutually hostile interest. Okay. To understand these two, it can be done through example. Separatist. Example of creation of separate Punjab state. Punjab state. I'll discuss this in detail in post-independence, but let me give you a brief overview. When we talk about creation of separate Punjab state, remember I told you linguistic reorganization ke liye state reorganization commission was established. However, Bombay and Punjab were not bifurcated. Punjab was not bifurcated because it was believed that the demand for a separate Punjab state is communal in nature. Akali Dal said that since we are the Sikh organization and Punjab state consists of Sikh people, so we have the right to govern them. So they started demanding a separate Punjab state on religious lines. And that is how it was being put forward. Master Tara Singh, who used to be the president that time in 1953, had organized an All India Akali conference where he had clearly demanded a separate Punjab state, and it was on religious lines. However, Nehru ji was very clear, the leadership at that time was very clear that any demand which is based on caste and religious lines will not be accepted because it is a threat to the secular fabric of your country. So any communal demand would not be accepted, right? So later it was Sant Fateh Singh during the leadership of Indira Gandhi that it was put forward that the demand is linguistic in nature and not religious. However, traditionally the demand was religious in nature. So when based on religion, you were demanding a separate state, you were demanding more autonomy. However, within the Indian Union, you were not threatening the territorial integrity of the India. So within the Indian Union, you were demanding a separate state, you were demanding more autonomy on religious lines. That is separatist communalism. Why it is considered as a threat to national integration? Because it is communal in nature. It is a threat to secular fabric. However, the demand for Khalistan is cessationist. Where on religious lines, you are not only demanding an autonomous state, you are demanding a separate nation altogether. Is that clear? Mitali, relative deprivation has no end to it. It has no end to it. Did you get the point? It all depends that with reference group you are comparing yourself, right? So ideally, it is believed that welfarist communalism is not a threat to national integration. However, fringe elements can manipulate. That देखो जैन लोगों को वो सिर्फ अपने ही ग्रुप के प्रॉस्पेरिटी के लिए काम करते हैं. There is Jain International Trade Organization JITO, which is basically providing scholarship to the Jain students. They have full-fledged hostel facility, subsidized cost पे उनको UPSC की तैयारी करवाई जा रही है, and they are doing so well. तो ऐसे तो बोल ही सकते हैं सब. But then वो अपने ग्रुप के लिए कर रहे हैं ना. आपका भी ग्रुप आपके लिए करे. So the point here, what I'm trying to say is there is no end to relative deprivation. Because relative deprivation comes from feeling. कहते हैं ना कि गर्मी, बेइज्जती, दुख जितना फील करो उतनी ज्यादा लगती है. ठीक है, तो जितना आप गर्मी फील करोगे, जितनी आप बेइज्जती फील करोगे, जितना आप सोचोगे यू आर लीडिंग अ वेरी डिलैपिडेटेड लाइफ, उतना ज्यादा हो जाएगा. सो रिलेटिव डेप्रीवेशन हैज नो एंड टू इटसेल्फ. दैट इज व्हाई आई डोंट फियर डेप्रीवेशन, आई फियर रिलेटिव डेप्रीवेशन मोर. क्योंकि फिर तो आप अपने आप को किसी से भी कंपेयर करने बैठ जाओगे और बुरा फील करोगे. इज दैट वेरी क्लियर? एवरीवन हैज द राइट to work for the upliftment of their community. That is absolutely allowed to do that. Is that clear? Provided they are not causing harm to others. Others are perceiving that it is causing harm to them is a separate issue. But they are not doing any harm to others. And that is what is being provided also in your constitution. Is this very clear? Is the cessationist part clear for everyone? ठीक है? So just one small question. What is the difference between religiousness and communalism? ठीक है? Because I haven't taught anything much in communalism. I'll continue tomorrow where we'll be talking about the evolution. Last two dictate करना है? करा तो नहीं था मैंने. Separatist, write down. Separatist communalism, when a separate state is demanded, based on religious lines, however within the Indian Union, is referred as separatist communalism. Or you can write, when there is demand for autonomy, on the religious lines, however, within the Indian Union, it is referred as separatist communalism. For example, demand for Punjab state. Cessationist. When there is demand for separate nation on religious lines, which threatens the territorial integration, it is referred as cessationist communalism. For example, demand for Khalistan. So we'll continue tomorrow. Tomorrow we'll finish off communalism and I'll start with regionalism. That's the agenda for tomorrow's lecture. Okay, so officially the lecture gets concluded. I am just taking few of the doubts. So there is one doubt. Shantanu, what is linguistic chauvinism? When you take pride in your language and you try to impose your language as superior as against the other linguistic groups. So you are not only taking pride, but you are trying to establish the dominance of your linguistic identity over the others. That is linguistic chauvinism. Right? Taking pride in your own culture is not wrong. But when you project your culture to be superior as compared to others, to be dominating as compared to others, then that is wrong. So that is linguistic chauvinism. Cult is basically, how should I put it? Okay, let us say that you have every religion, let us say, has goal of salvation. Okay, more or less, the religion have goal of salvation. And the means are also provided to achieve that salvation. Okay. However, if I innovate with respect to the means to achieve that goal of salvation, it will result into formation of cult. There is a charismatic personality there who by means of cultural innovation or cultural importation are trying to provide you new avenues to seek salvation. I'm giving you an example. Not always it is salvation. I'm just giving you an example. that there is a charismatic personality who becomes the cult, right? So whether it is Sri Ravi Shankar, or whether it is, Nirmala Mataji of Sahaj Yog, whether it is Brahma Kumari. So the point here which I'm trying to say is that there has to be a cult, a leadership, a personality, which personality acts as a charismatic personality for you, and via means of cultural innovation, importation, they are trying to provide you new avenues of seeking goals of salvation. So that is cult. However, you might not agree to their means. You said nahi, Osho was a cult, right? So largely it is a personality who's there, who you consider as a charismatic personality. That personality, through cultural innovation, importation, are providing you solutions to your problems. Is that very clear? So that results into formation of cult. Ma'am, can you please tell us the strategy? Okay. वैभव, आई थिंक सो ऐसा नहीं है कि कल्ट सरवाइव नहीं कर सकता है विदाउट अ लीडर. But to start with a cult, there has to be a leader. There are many cults which are surviving even after the death of the leader. Because it is through their teachings, it is through their ideology, it is through their perception that they are functioning. Okay? However, largely it is believed that the cult formation happens when there is a charismatic personality. But aisa nahi hai that after the death of the personality, the cult comes to an end. The cult still thrives. Okay? So, कह सकते हैं. But usually, if you see, largely the cults have emerged on the basis of strong charismatic personality. If we try to look at the examples. But I have also seen various examples where, let us say, example of Sahaj Yog. When Sahaj Yog emerged, it was Shri Mataji, Shri Nirmala Devi, who created this Sahaj Yog. And the basis was Kundalini Jagran, that how through Kundalini Jagran you can become your own guru. But then after her death also, Sahaj Yog is thriving because that idea has been disseminated in the larger section. So now that cult is being thriving based on carrying forward the lineage of those ideas, the philosophy of Kundalini Jagran, the practice, how that Kundalini Jagran has to be ensured. Is that very clear? Okay. See, okay, officially the class ends. I'm just discussing about prelims. Yeah, to be very honest, one thing, everybody has to have their own strategy. Okay? But if you ask how I prepared and how I managed to clear prelims every time, so if you honestly ask, I was very good with CSAT. So that's one thing. So there are many students who are not good with CSAT. You must be surprised why I started with CSAT, because that is the major challenge which has been observed recently, that people are not able to qualify CSAT. So given your own individual strength, okay, because no matter how hard you study for your GS, if you're not qualifying your CSAT, and CSAT paper for past 2-3 years are not that simple as well. So if you do not have a strong command over, comprehension skills, it has nothing to do with English. It's more about comprehending the passages which is being given. If you're not good with your quant or for logical reasoning, then you need to practice that. So to start with that, if you have command over that, if you are engineers and everything, you can manage. So it's okay. Ek aad test de dena, baat khatam. But for those who don't have the background in that, I would suggest that every 10 days, just start practicing CSAT paper. And for that, I would advise first go through previous year CSAT papers. Okay? And then after attempting those CSAT papers, identify the areas where you need to work upon. And then accordingly strategize your preparation and go ahead with it. That's one thing. Second thing is, as far as GS paper is concerned, कभी होता है कि करंट पे बेस फोकस होता है, कभी होता है कि कन्वेंशनल पोर्शंस, स्टैटिक पोर्शंस आ जाते हैं. तो इट ऑल डिपेंड्स. सो लार्जली इट इज अ ब्लेंड. सो लेट्स नॉट get focused. I still remember there was this one year when the entire paper, I think 2016-17 की बात है, entire prelims का GS paper was, मतलब entire as in you can comfortably secure the passing marks, the qualifying marks by studying from PT 365. उस साल इतना करंट आया and largely वो सारा PT 365 से फंस गया. So good enough for the students. So हर जगह ये खबर हो गई भाई PT 365 से आया है. Next year prelims के लिए everybody only relied upon PT 365 to clear the prelims. There was not even a single question which was asked from PT 365. So the point, and I'm standing on this platform and saying that, the very next year there was not even a single question from PT 365. So there cannot be any watertight compartmentalized preparation कि नहीं इस बार इस पे focus कर लो या उस पे कर लो. One thing that cannot be compromised upon is your standard preparation. That is the standard portion, the static portion. Because if you know your concepts well, you can at least apply the concept. But if you don't know the concept, then even current affairs would not make any sense to you. So do not compromise upon your static portion. That's one thing. Second thing is there are a lot of open sessions on Vision IAS का YouTube platform. इस साल का नहीं, पिछले साल का भी देख लेना. कोई सा भी चलेगा. How to prepare for prelims and different subject wise it is given, right? So very quickly, और कभी कभी पूरा सेशन देखने का तुम लोग के पास टाइम नहीं होगा, आई टोटली अग्री, तो कोई ना कोई एक बहुत अच्छा इंसान होता है जो नीचे जो कमेंट बॉक्स होता है उसमें जाके लिख देता है कि इस टाइम स्टैम्प पे दिस इज बीइंग डिस्कस, इस टाइम स्टैम्प पे दिस इज बीइंग डिस्कस. देयर आर सम गुड जेन्युइनली गॉड सेंड सोल्स ऑन अर्थ दैट दे बेसिकली आइडेंटिफाई इस टाइम स्टैम्प पे ये है, तो वहां पे सोर्सेज वगैरह दे रखे होते हैं, ठीक है, या स्पेसिफिक ट्रेंड एनालिसिस वगैरह दे रखा होता है, तो वो जाकर आप देख सकते हो. दैट्स वन थिंग. इफ यू आस्क अबाउट मी, क्योंकि थोड़ा इधर में ट्रेंड चेंज हो गया एंड लार्जली आई एम डीलिंग विद दोज एरियाज व्हिच आर मोर रेलेवेंट फ्रॉम मेंस पॉइंट ऑफ व्यू, तो वहां पे थोड़ा सा एक डिस्कनेक्ट आ जाता है. बट इफ आई टॉक अबाउट प्रीलिम्स, यू नीड टू आइडेंटिफाई कुछ कॉमन चीजें हैं जो हमेशा स्टैंडर्ड रहती है कि भाई पॉलिटी है, इकोनॉमी है, साइंस एंड टेक है, इन्वायरमेंट है, ज्योग्राफी है, एंड एंशिएंट मिडिएवल आर्ट एंड कल्चर. आर्ट एंड कल्चर नॉट वेरी डायरेक्टली, बट हाँ एंशिएंट मिडिएवल मॉडर्न हिस्ट्री है. सो based on my experiences of being an aspirant myself and as well as a teacher, I have noticed that modern Indian history, polity, these are best bets. Trust me, these are best bets in a way that if a question comes, the probability of getting those questions correct is very high. I'm not saying that this happens all the time, but largely it happens. Modern Indian history as well as your polity is the best bet. Economy sometimes is very simple, like this year. It was very simple. Sometimes slightly complicated, जब कभी करंट से बहुत ज्यादा ऐसे कॉन्सेप्ट्स पूछ लेते हैं जिसके लिए हम प्रिपेयर्ड नहीं होते. But having said that, if you have done your traditional aspect of economy in a decent manner and you are thorough with your current affairs, economy is manageable. Geography में largely the number of questions have declined over a period of time because the weightage has been shifted to more of environment based questions. तो कभी कभी वो bifurcation में issue आ जाता है. Otherwise geography में map based questions वगैरह बहुत आते हैं. तो map based is one area which needs to be worked upon. ठीक है. Environment and science and tech can be challenging because many a times you actually are not aware. आता करंट अफेयर्स से, बट कभी कभी होता है हमको नहीं पता होता, या बहुत बार करंट अफेयर्स नहीं होता है, बहुत ज्यादा बेसिक ऑब्जर्वेशन होती है जो अगर हमने साइंस स्कूल में उतनी अच्छी नहीं पढ़ी है तो हम रिलेट नहीं कर पाते हैं. ठीक है. However, if you study your current affairs well, if you just stick to the classroom notes and if you stick, क्योंकि देखो यार जो भी टीचर हो, जैसा भी टीचर होते हैं, इतनी मेहनत हर कोई करके आता है that they provide you minimum fodder which can ensure you being at least sailing through the crisis. So stick to your classroom notes, stick to your current affairs. That has to be done. एंशियंट मिडिएवल में क्या होता है, एंशियंट में स्टिल कहीं ना कहीं पता होता है बुद्धिज्म, जैनिज्म, ये कुछ एरियाज होते हैं जहां से क्वेश्चंस बहुत पूछे जाते हैं. इसीलिए मैं कह रही हूं वो ओपन सेशंस के ट्रेंड एनालिसिस देख लो, क्योंकि देयर इट हैज क्लियरली बीन टोल्ड दैट विच एरियाज यू नीड टू फोकस, क्योंकि टाइम लिमिटेड है. सो यू हैव टू स्ट्रेटेजाइज योर प्रिपरेशन. फर्स्ट फोकस ऑन दोज एरियाज विच आर वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट. Once you are done and dusted with them, then you can further focus on those areas where there is a probability they might be asked. And then if you are not having the time left, you can leave the areas which have not been asked in past 5-6 years. यहाँ पे किसी ने आपको नहीं बोला है कि पूरा एंशियंट, पूरा मिडिएवल, पूरा एनवायरमेंट, पूरा साइंस एंड टेक सब पढ़ के जाना है. ऐसा किसी ने आपसे नहीं कहा है और ऐसा कोई हार्ड एंड फास्ट रूल नहीं है. Is that very clear? But current cannot be compromised. And the subjects that largely has been asked, you have to identify your strengths. For example, polity, modern Indian history, economy, ये कुछ ऐसे areas होते हैं जिसमें you should make sure that you don't go wrong with. तो इनके सेक्शनल टेस्ट बहुत अच्छे से प्रैक्टिस करो, क्योंकि देखो 18 से 20 क्वेश्चन पॉलिटी के आना, 10-12 क्वेश्चन मॉडर्न इंडियन हिस्ट्री के आना आ ही जाते. ठीक है, इकोनॉमी थोड़ा ऊपर नीचे होता है लेकिन मैनेज किया जा सकता है। दिक्कत आती है साइंस एंड टेक वाले क्वेश्चंस, कभी कभी इतने टिपिकल हो जाते हैं कि आप आंसर नहीं कर पाते। एंशिएंट मीडिएवल, स्पेशली मीडिएवल, कुछ भी पूछ लेते हैं और कितना पढ़ेंगे भाई, देयर इज अ लिमिट टू स्टडी, राइट? सो समटाइम्स द output is very less compared to the input which is required to be put in. So there you have to be strategic. With respect to geography, I think map की separate classes होती हैं, लास्ट ईयर तो थी, हाँ आपके साथ भी होगी या हो चुकी होगी, तो वो मैप की क्लासेस अटेंड इट वेरी सीरियसली क्योंकि बहुत फायदा करती है। सो यहां पे यू हैव टू डू इट। देन द स्ट्रैटेजी कम्स विद रिस्पेक्ट टू हाउ मच टाइम एंड हाउ यू हैव टू डिवोट योर टाइम। अगेन इट डिपेंड्स अपॉन द इंडिविजुअल्स। There are some people who study one subject continuously for 5-6 days, finish it off, move to the other. That is also one of the strategy. I personally am not very fond of this strategy because फिर क्या होता है, एक सब्जेक्ट को जब आप 10 दिन पढ़ के छोड़ देते हो तो फिर आप 1-2 महीने तक उसको नहीं उठाते हो क्योंकि then you are studying other subjects. Then after 1.5 months you realize you don't remember anything of that subject. Human brain है यार, how much will it restore? So my strategy used to be, I used to divide my entire day in for 3 subjects, 2 subjects and 1 current affairs. And that is how I used to divide. And I used to keep 1 day free. That was a buffer day in the entire week, where I used to make sure that if something is left, which is not covered according to my timetable in those 6 days, I'll cover it on the 7th day. 7th day was more for rejuvenation, for revising what I have done in 6 days. Because at the end of it, if you don't remember what you have studied, all your effort will go in vain. That's another thing. Third thing is, with respect to prelims, it was the help of my friend that I developed a very positive attitude. I was very scared of prelims because I used to think it's like a lottery system. No matter how hardworking you are, on that very day, if it didn't work for you, you will be out of the list and you will never get the opportunity to write mains. So I was very scared of prelims. But then my friend, she gave me a lot of confidence and she told me, Smriti, the best thing about prelims is, I was like, what? She's like, answer is right in front of you. I was like, yeah. So she's like, it's more like Sherlock Holmes approach. That, the answer is right in front of you. Either you know who's the culprit. If you don't know who's the culprit, then by using those strategy of guessing, eliminating, you have to find the culprit. At least you have the answer in front of you. तो अगर कभी भी पढ़ा है, एक आध बार भी रिवाइज किया है, so if you're glancing through those options and sometimes options actually एक भी पता है, suppose करो कभी एक आपको एग्जांपल देती हूँ, एक पीवीटीजी पे क्वेश्चन आया था और उसमें सबको मैंने पढ़ाया था, देयर आर 75 पीवीटीजीज, पीवीटीजी का क्या कैरेक्टरिस्टिक है, सब कुछ पढ़ा दिया। तो यूपीएससी ने क्वेश्चन पूछा और 75 पीवीटीजी वाला जो पॉइंट था ये सबको आता था। उसके बाद उन्होंने पूछा आंध्रा में ये नए पीवीटीजीज हैं या उड़ीसा में ये। अब किसको याद होगा आंध्रा में कौन सा पीवीटीजी है और उड़ीसा में कौन सा पीवीटीजी है, बट सबको ये पता था कि 75 पीवीटीजीज आर देयर इन इंडिया। Is that very clear? और ऑप्शन इस तरह से दिए हुए थे that if you only remember that one statement 75 PVTGs, you can identify the option and you can correct it. Did you get my point? So क्वेश्चन को देख के डरना नहीं होता, रही मुझे तो पता ही नहीं आंध्रा में कौन है, उड़ीसा में कौन है, और पता करना भी नहीं है। 75 नाम याद करोगे क्या स्टेट वाइज? सो यू हैव टू बी वेरी जुडिशियस व्हाइल यू आर प्रिपेयरिंग योरसेल्फ। अगर एक बार ऐसा सवाल पूछ लिया तो सारे नाम याद करने बैठ गए, ऐसा कुछ नहीं होता। एक स्टेटमेंट भी अगर पता है तो कभी कभी ऑप्शंस इस तरह से दिए होते हैं कि एलिमिनेट हो जाते हैं। इसलिए द बॉटम लाइन इज द मोर यू प्रैक्टिस क्वेश्चंस, द मोर यू विल बी इन द कंफर्टेबल जोन। एंड ट्रस्ट मी, नो मैटर जितने टॉपर्स थे या जितने आज तक, सब लोग आपको एक ही बात बोलेंगे, जितने टेस्ट लिखोगे, तो वेदर इट इज प्रीवियस ईयर क्वेश्चन, वेदर इट इज मॉक टेस्ट फ्रॉम द मार्केट, वेदर इट इज द टेस्ट अवेलेबल टू यू बाय विजन, मेक श्योर यू अटेम्प्ट एटलीस्ट 40 to 50 टेस्ट। डू यू रियलाइज 4 से 5 हजार क्वेश्चन अगर प्रैक्टिस कर लोगे तो क्या वहां जाके 100 क्वेश्चन नहीं कर पाओगे? सोचो साइकोलॉजिकली कितना मोटिवेटिंग होगा that you've practiced 5,000 questions, you are in a comfortable zone. Is that very clear? Secondly, there are 2 ways of attempting the test. One way is that full test mode. So एक बार थोड़ा सा तैयारी हो जाए आप लोगों की, एक सब्जेक्ट कंप्लीट कर लो, जैसे पॉलिटी का सेक्शनल टेस्ट दे रहे हो, सिलेबस हैज बीन कंप्लीटेड, गो राइट द टेस्ट, दैट्स वन वे ऑफ डूइंग इट। बट व्हेन यू हैव टू गिव टू मेनी टेस्ट, लेट अस से, ठीक है, एवरी डे यू वांट टू प्रैक्टिस कि चलो आधा घंटा टेस्ट देख लेते हैं या प्रैक्टिस कर लेते हैं क्वेश्चन। हर चीज टेस्ट नहीं होती, इट्स ऑल्सो अबाउट प्रैक्टिसिंग द क्वेश्चंस। सो रात में सोने से पहले लेट अस से हमने 20-25 क्वेश्चन प्रैक्टिस कर लिए, तो कोई भी मॉक टेस्ट उठा लो, जैसे पॉलिटी का उठा लिया, तो यू आर सॉल्विंग द क्वेश्चन। नाउ लेट अस सपोज कि आपको वो क्वेश्चन आपने नहीं ठीक किया, फॉर सम रीजन यू न्यू द आंसर बट समहाउ यू मतलब यू डिडंट मार्क द करेक्ट आंसर, अब वो सेल्फ इंट्रोस्पेक्टिंग मोड में मत चले जाओ, हाय ये आंसर क्यों गलत हो गया, मेरी तो तैयारी अच्छी नहीं हो रही है, आई थिंक आई एम नॉट प्रिपेयर्ड फॉर इट, एंड देन यू आर इनटू दैट पैनिक जोन। कोई बात नहीं, मॉक टेस्ट में टॉप नहीं करना है, एग्जाम वहां क्वालिफाई करना है, वहां पे भी टॉप नहीं करना है, सिर्फ रिलेटिवली इतना मैनेज कर लो कि जो कट ऑफ लिस्ट उससे बस एक नंबर उस तरफ हो, बस उतना मैनेज करना है, ठीक है ना। सो द पॉइंट आई एम ट्राइंग टू मेक हियर इज दैट अगर आप आंसर कर रहे हो और कुछ कुछ ऊपर नीचे हो जाए, जस्ट लुक एट द आंसर फॉर्मेट, देखो क्या आंसर है एंड व्हाई डिड यू गेट इट रॉन्ग, बस। एंड मेक श्योर कि नेक्स्ट टाइम वो क्वेश्चन आए तो यू डोंट कमिट द सेम एरर, दैट्स इट। नेक्स्ट टाइम कमिट सम न्यू एरर, डोंट कमिट द सेम मिस्टेक, बस इतना अप्रोच होना चाहिए। सो डू नॉट टेक दीज टेस्ट इन अ कैपेसिटी दैट इट रिड्यूसेस योर मोरल, इस तरह की कोई हरकत मत करना। Is that very clear? That is all what is required. As far as Instant Tech and environment is concerned, you can depend upon the classroom notes. Then you have the current affair material also which is being provided to you. Then you can depend upon the mock test also. अगर तुम्हें लगता है कि क्लासरूम में या करंट अफेयर मटेरियल में सब कुछ नहीं है तो मॉक टेस्ट पे डिपेंड कर लो, क्योंकि मॉक टेस्ट में वी डू 35 टेस्ट है, सो इन दैट साइंस एंड टेक के भी टेस्ट होंगे, राइट। सो यू विल गेट इनफ फॉर्डर that you can be prepared, क्योंकि see there is a limit of acquiring information, कितना पढ़ोगे, there is an end to it, right? So don't do that. Just make sure limited books but more number of times rather than going for unlimited books and one time. So and that is one strategy which everyone will tell you because that is what it works, trust me, क्योंकि ना फिर रिकॉल करने में बहुत दिक्कत आती है, तो वो गलती मत करना, ठीक है। और दूसरी सबसे इंपॉर्टेंट चीज, व्हाई एम आई आस्किंग यू टू प्रैक्टिस द मॉक टेस्ट इज बिकॉज देन यू विल गेट टू नो दैट हाउ मच क्वेश्चंस यू नीड टू अटेम्प्ट, हाउ मच योर गेस वर्क इज वर्किंग इन योर फेवर। ये सारी छोटी छोटी चीजें बट ये बहुत मैटर करती हैं। सो फर्स्ट, आइडेंटिफाई योर स्ट्रॉन्ग एरियाज, prepare a proper timetable, a reasonable timetable, ठीक है, based which you can achieve. Make sure that whatever you are studying, you are revising. So half an hour in a day should be kept to revise what you have studied in the entire day. One day in a week should be kept to revise what you have studied in the entire week. And it should be more like a rejuvenating day. There would be times when your pace will get disrupted, when 2-3 days you're not feeling well, you're having a headache, you don't feel like studying. Don't think that it is the end of your preparation. These are few obstacles which everyone faces. So just overcome the obstacle. It's a very common thing. It's a very natural thing कि पहले पढ़ाई बहुत अच्छी हो रही थी, बहुत जोश में थे, अचानक से बिल्कुल डिटैचमेंट हो जाता है कि पढ़ने का मन ही नहीं करता। It's okay. It happens with everyone. So don't worry. There are phases. You should learn to overcome those phases. That's it. Okay. Then make sure that identify your strength areas. Look for the questions which have been asked in the past. Rely on your notes. Rely on your current affairs. Rely on your standard books. And practice as much question. तो जो कहीं छूट गया होगा ना कंटेंट, जो क्लासरूम में नहीं, कितनी किताबें पढ़ोगे? क्लासरूम ही पढ़ लो ढंग से, क्लासरूम कर लो, करंट अफेयर्स कर लो, एंड बेस्ड आफ्टर दैट अगर कुछ बच जाता है तो वो मॉक टेस्ट में हो जाता है। वन पीस ऑफ एडवाइस, 2 इंस्टीट्यूट के मॉक टेस्ट लगाना, एक विजन, एक अपनी मर्जी का कोई भी चूज कर लो। इज दैट वेरी क्लियर? तो वेराइटी ऑफ क्वेश्चंस मिल जाती है, दैट इज वन थिंग। सो मेक श्योर यू डू दैट, ठीक है, एंड प्रैक्टिस एज मेनी मॉक्स एज पॉसिबल। इज दैट क्लियर? ठीक है। शांतनु, आई टोटली अंडरस्टैंड। शांतनु, जब दो दो I know, I'm so sorry. I totally relate. When 2 classes are there, it's a challenge. एक काम कर सकते हैं, जैसे you can strategize that if you believe, देखो, there will always be an option that if you believe that this area, this topic can be covered after your prelims, then you can leave those classes that could be covered after prelims. तो आप वो classes छोड़ सकते हो, ठीक है। या जब कभी पढ़ने का मन नहीं कर रहा है, ठीक है, जैसे कभी दोपहर का ये टाइम होता है कि वैसे ही नींद आ रही होती है, पढ़ने का उतना मन नहीं करता, तो क्लास में बैठ गए। मैं कितना, आपको भी लग रहा होगा कि मैम क्या बोल रही है, बट या इट हैपेंस। वैसे भी कुछ पढ़ाई तो होती नहीं है, दोपहर का टाइम होता है, मौसम ऐसा हो रखा है, इतना आलस आता है, क्या कोई पढ़ेगा, ठीक है। सो इट डिपेंड्स अपॉन individual to individual. I'm generally talking about me. मतलब this time 1 to 4 is like, अगर if I am not taking class, I would just be lazing around. So the point here is that depends. तो ये टाइम कर लो जो आपका सबसे प्रोडक्टिव टाइम होता है, ठीक है, I would suggest go for self study in that. During the day there will always be one time which is very productive for you, and if the class is going on related to a subject which is not of immediate importance in your prelims, you can skip. Yeah, you already know what topics would be covered in the next class, and if you think that that topic can be managed by watching the recorded lecture, or it can be managed through synopsis or something like that, you can skip for time being, क्योंकि अब अभी तो फिर भी तुम अफोर्ड कर पा रहे हो लेक्चर देखना. मार्च जैसे आ जाएगा एंड इफ यू हैव टू राइट दिस ईयर्स प्रीलिम्स, फिर कोई लेक्चर देख ही नहीं पाओगे, चाहे हम कितना भी अप्रैल तक क्लासेस करा ले, मार्च के बाद देखना बिल्कुल पॉसिबल नहीं होगा. तो अभी तो फिर भी यू कैन डू योर क्लासेस. ठीक है, सो मेक श्योर यहां पे थोड़ा सा स्ट्रैटेजिकली प्रिपेयर कर लो. ठीक, इज दिस वेरी क्लियर? ठीक है, कैन आई कंक्लूड नाउ? आशीष, डू यू हैव ऑप्शनल का रिकॉर्डेड लेक्चर अवेलेबल? बिकॉज आजकल तो सारे ही ऑप्शनल ऑनलाइन भी, अच्छा ऑनलाइन तो हो ही रहे ना, तो रिकॉर्डेड लेक्चर तो तुमको मिलेगा ना. तो अगर हाफ मतलब 2/3 ऑफ योर ऑप्शनल इज कवर्ड, देन लीव. मतलब आई थिंक मार्च फर्स्ट वीक से स्टार्ट फोकसिंग ऑन योर प्रीलिम्स. ऑप्शनल कैन बी डन आफ्टर दैट. ठीक है, कोई बात नहीं आदित्य, इट्स ओके, कोई बात नहीं. आप कर सी, ऐसा कुछ नहीं है. इफ यू आर राइटिंग दिस ईयर्स मींस इट्स ओके, दिस ईयर्स प्रीलिम्स इट्स ओके. अभी भी टाइम है, जून फर्स्ट वीक में है ना, तो मार्च अप्रैल में तीन महीने हैं, तो फर्स्ट मार्च से भी फोकस कर सकते हो. तो ऐसा कोई इतना परेशान नहीं. और पता है, मैं सीरियसली बताऊं, अपनी बात करती हूँ. ओके, जस्ट बिफोर आई कंक्लूड दिस लेक्चर, वन पर्सनल इंसिडेंट जस्ट टू गिव यू अ मोरल बूस्ट. मेरा फर्स्ट अटेम्प्ट था 2010 में. And again, my friend enters into the picture. And I still remember 2nd of May 2010 was UP ka prelims, and 23rd of May was UPSC prelims. I still remember the date. So just to tell you what exactly or how it works, 2nd of May, and I went to write UP ka prelims. Or UP ka prelims, to be very honest, was like a practice लिखाती हूँ, क्योंकि उस टाइम पे यूपी में भी ना प्रीलिम्स में ऑप्शनल आता था. मेरा पबैड था फर्स्ट ऑप्शनल, मतलब प्रीलिम्स में मेरा ऑप्शनल पबैड था, एंड फॉर मेंस इट वाज पबैड एंड सोशियो. So I went and it was bad. I was actually going to use a word, but then I realized I'm talking to students. But it was bad, okay? And 2nd of May was the day I realized I am just not prepared. बिकॉज क्या था कि मैं तो तैयारी करती जा रही थी, एंड आई वाज स्टडिंग पॉलिटी ऑल्सो. लक्ष्मीकांत वाज डन 3-4 टाइम्स, एंड यू नो मॉडर्न इंडियन हिस्ट्री भी पढ़ ली थी, सब कुछ कर लिया था. बट जिस तरह के क्वेश्चंस आए, क्योंकि मेरे टाइम पे ना टेस्ट सीरीज वगैरह इतना था नहीं 2010 में, और था भी तो मैंने कभी नहीं दिया था, तो मुझे नहीं पता था. सो जब पेपर आया तो आई कुडंट आंसर, एंड माई मोटिवेशन वाज लाइक, मतलब on the it was bad, okay, and I decided I will not write the attempt. UPSC मेरे को देना ही नहीं है. I totally decided I'm not writing, because अगर मैं यूपी का स्टेट इतना खराब देकर आई हूं, तो यूपीएससी तो मेरा होना ही नहीं है. एंड भाई आप समझ सकते हो ना, आप भी बोलोगे बार बार बोल रहे हैं, बट प्लीज अंडरस्टैंड, व्हेन यू आर अ गोल्ड मेडलिस्ट, ऑल योर लाइफ यू हैव बीन एकेडमिकली वेरी साउंड, एवरीबडी हैज सो मच ऑफ एक्सपेक्टेशन कि मतलब स्मृति यूपीएससी लिखेगी तो यूपीएससी तो उसका स्वागत करके बुलाएंगे. ऐसी एक्सपेक्टेशन थी मेरे घर वालों को कि स्मृति को तो बस एग्जाम देना है, क्लियर करना तो उनको डाउट था ही नहीं. उन्हें यह था बस स्मृति जाके लिख दे, हो तो जाएगा ही. आपको समझ आया ना, ऐसा कुछ होता नहीं है. सो द पॉइंट हियर इज आई वाज टोटली हैव कंप्लीटली लॉस्ट इट. उसके बाद दैट फ्रेंड एंटर्स इनटू द पिक्चर, एंड आई टोल्ड हर दैट लुक, आई एम नॉट राइटिंग द एग्जाम. शी टोल्ड मी, स्मृति थैंक यू सो मच फॉर नॉट राइटिंग दिस एग्जाम. आई वाज लाइक, है, मुझे लगा कि मुझे मनाएगी कि नहीं नहीं स्मृति कर तू कर सकती है. उसने बोला नहीं, थैंक यू सो मच फॉर नॉट राइटिंग दिस एग्जाम. आई वाज लाइक, व्हाई? बोलते बिकॉज मेजॉरिटी ऑफ द गुड स्टूडेंट्स under the pressure opts out not to write this exam. Is that very clear? And because of students like you, average students like us, since it is relative performance, we manage to clear. मेरे को लगा यार, मतलब आप समझ सकते हो, अगर वो शायद मुझसे ये कहती ना कि नहीं यार स्मृति तू कर सकती है, ये वो, मेरे को नहीं उसका बात जमता. बट व्हेन शी टोल्ड मी ना, इट्स पीपल लाइक यू बिकॉज ऑफ whom we people clear the exam. I was like, अच्छा, I'm giving up on such an important opportunity. But then I was like, nahi, you're not realizing I am not prepared for this exam. So then she told me that, okay, you still have 21 days left. You study every day without fail, with that zeal that you're writing the exam. On 23rd of May in the morning, you decide whether to write the exam or not. आई वाज लाइक अच्छा ठीक है चलो ये भी कर लेते. For 21 days, very diligently. Trust me, those 21 days were the best days because I was having no expectation. I was having no pressure. In fact, I was thinking, shayad I have an option of not writing the exam. So, but those 21 days, I studied like anything. Okay, actually that was the SAR, that was the crux of my preparation. Remaining all the efforts were not that fruitful, but those 21 days were very fruitful because that without having any doubt in my mind, I was preparing. On 23rd of May in the morning, I asked my parents not to tell anyone that I have written prelims. They were like, "Ha Smriti, you don't worry, you just go and write. We will not tell anyone that you've written prelims." I was like, "Theek hai." I wrote the exam. Both the set of papers, I came back. My mother just asked me one thing. Am I supposed to tell the relatives that you've written prelims? And I just looked at her and I said, yeah, you can tell. Because I was so confident that there was no need even to check the list answer key because I was so confident I'm clearing. And the very next day I started preparing for mains. So are you understanding that a person, it is all about your attitude. It is all about you. Because you can never be prepared for a competitive exam. यार syllabus देखो, कहाँ से तुमको सब कुछ आता होगा और कहाँ से तुम सारे आंसर्स. कितने ऐसे क्वेश्चन थे मेरे फर्स्ट अटेम्प्ट में जो मैंने फर्जी गेस मारे थे और फिर भी सही हुए क्योंकि थोड़ा इतना पीस ऑफ माइंड था क्योंकि मुझे एक सेटिस्फैक्शन था मेरे घर वाले किसी को नहीं बताएंगे कि मैं प्रीलिम्स लिखने जा रही हूँ. तो अगर नहीं भी हुआ तो मैं कह दूंगी मैंने दिया ही नहीं. I know you must be thinking this is so kiddish, but trust me, at that point of time, 11 years back, when I was in that age, this was very crucial what others think about me. Are you getting the point? So everything is in your attitude. Have the right kind of attitude. Don't take any stress. आप कहोगे मैम it is easier said than done. भैया मैंने खुद भुगता है. मैं लड़की थी. नहीं अभी भी हूं. I was a girl. I belong to a मारवाड़ी community. हमारे यहाँ 20-21 साल में शादियां हो जाती हैं. So my parents, can you imagine how much pressure was there on me? So if I can sail through that pressure, you can as well. Is that very clear? ठीक है. So just बहुत बातें हो गई. I've taken a lot of time. So just prepare and all the best and take care. We'll meet tomorrow. चलो. It's okay. मैं आई दिन होप लूज करती हूँ even today also. So it's okay. Actually, it's okay. Just go with the flow. Just go with the flow. Every day, set a small target for yourself. Just stick to those targets and make a realistic target and just try to clear. Clear as in achieve that target on a daily basis. Exam में क्या होगा वो बाद में देखेंगे. ठीक है. कर्म कर, फल की इच्छा मत रख. निष्काम कर्म. So that is how. And I am actually talking in a very serious manner. Not just for the sake of saying it. I genuinely mean it. Just focus on your efforts because anyway result is not in your control. So why waste our time on something which is beyond our control? Just focus on your efforts. Okay? And don't be disappointed. Not from your own self, not from your own preparation, and not even from your seriousness towards this exam. Because every day is not going to be the same day. There would be ups and downs. There would be when you will be in that self-doubt mode. So don't be enchanted with that. It's very normal. Take care, people. Bye. Have a nice day. शांतनु टॉपर तो टॉप करने के बाद ये भी बोल देगा कि मैं सर के बल खड़ा होके पढ़ा था. नहीं 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 ऐसा कुछ नहीं होता. बट हाँ 3 से 4 बार रिवाइज करना होता है. बस वही है. 3 to 4 times एटलीस्ट वन शुड रिवाइज. एटलीस्ट मैंने तो किया था भैया. पहले अटेम्प्ट में भी 3-4 बार रिवाइज हो गया था. तो क्योंकि मुझे पता था मैं पॉलिटी मुझे पसंद भी थी और मैं पढ़ती भी बहुत थी. तो इतना तो करना होता है. और मॉक टेस्ट एक्चुअली देने होते हैं. मिनिमम 35 to 40 टेस्ट तो देने ही चाहिए. ये तो देयर इज अ टॉपर हु सेड दैट शी और ही हैज अटेम्प्टेड 80 टेस्ट 80 to 90 मॉक टेस्ट. अब इतना नहीं बोलूंगी मैं बट एटलीस्ट 35-40 टेस्ट शुड बी अटेम्प्टेड.